So again, our topic for today is thinking about how we can create hands-on activities in today's challenging educational environment. I know, just my mom works at a local high school and is constantly kind of going back and forth between whether they're in person or remote. And then, of course, trying to figure out ways to be able to do activities that are engaging while also being sure that we can protect students' health and staff health. So we wanted to spend some time today kind of talking about that. And as Lisa and I were thinking about this, we thought it'd be great to have someone from a museum perspective, because so much of what museums does is about hands-on activities. And so with that, we reached out to Natalie to see if she would be happy to come in and share some things that they're working on. So at this point, I'm going to turn things over to her to share with us some resources and things that is happening from a museum perspective.
Great, thank you. I'm going to share my screen right here. Okay, I'm going to share my screen now and pull up. Hopefully everyone received, let's see. There we go. Can everyone see my page now? All right. Hopefully everyone received the email from Kara that had the lesson plan, one of the lesson plans that we use at our museums. So to give you a little bit about background about the Abraham Lincoln Library and Museum, we are a museum dedicated to Abraham Lincoln. We have a 35,000 piece collection. We welcome students every year, both on site, in person, and also digitally. We have a very active Skype in the classroom page where we schedule virtual tours with students. The Skype in the classroom experience is actually changing come December 18th. Microsoft is moving to Flipgrid. If you are familiar with that, if not, I would be happy to send anyone information about that after we conclude so that you can learn more about it. So that is how all of our materials will be traveling soon, which actually works out really well for us because it does allow a more hands-on approach. Now, I don't know if your students are like my children. I have a 9-year-old almost to be 10 and a 5-year-old, but they are currently online. Our school system had to go totally online in the past week due to staffing issues related to COVID. So they are back at home now and they are already incredibly burnt out by looking at their screens and just by typing answers too. So we're trying to do more things with them. My husband and I are just to make it more interactive for them. But that's one thing that I feel prepared to do because we love to do on hands-on activities with students at the ALLM. And it was a little bit easier for us as a museum because we had been doing so many virtual tours before because we're actually undergoing a huge renovation project right now. Our site is physically shut down. So we've had to send out our lessons virtually to schools, which meant one of our biggest events that we have begun to make a yearly event is our Civil War STEAM program. Now, you may have heard of STEM. Well, this is STEAM. It includes the arts with the science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And what we've done is we've partnered with the medical school at Lincoln Memorial University and its vet school, and we have integrated our history teachings with the scientific and mathematical and medical teachings that they can provide too. But we had a big question this fall about what we could do since we obviously could not have people on site. Our university that we're located at has severely limited the amount of public who can come onto our campus. So we knew we had to get our program delivered both virtually, but also we packaged easy ideas that would be hands-on for the kids because that's what all of our STEAM programs is about. When we were on site, our vet school brought animals and animal bones for the students to be able to explore while we talked about the service of animals during the American Civil War. Our biology department brought water tables to show the kids how disease traveled and how soldiers were more likely to get disease if they were camped out for long periods of time near sources of water because of how runoff works. And so those are always very hands-on activities. But the question became, now that that has to go remote, how do we still convey that program? So this is actually one of the lessons that we packaged and sent out to teachers. We created an entire STEAM Google Classroom for the event this past October, and we allowed several classrooms to sign up and to receive bundled packages from us to do different activities. We knew it needed to be cost effective. We knew it needed to grab students' attention. And we also wanted to emotionally connect with the students for where they're at, particularly during COVID-19. And one thing that, again, we've heard over and over and over again from our students is that they are getting burnt out from being online as much. They're bored. They're bored. I feel bored. Well, that was one thing we definitely knew we could connect with a mindset for the soldiers who lived during the Civil War and our kids who are currently stuck at home with COVID-19. We are bored. We need something to do with our hands. So we actually sent two activities out that had a fidget spinner quality to it. You're probably familiar with fidget spinners. You may have even had to confiscate several within your classrooms before this event came about. So this is one of our learning units that we packaged together. And the goal was to help students understand how soldiers and civilians entertain themselves while learning about visual persistence and optical illusions. One thing we know that students have a little bit of a misconception for, and actually a lot of adults have misconceptions for, is that soldiers weren't always on the move. That heavy death rate during the Civil War, 720,000, really makes people think, well, they must have been fighting all the time. Well, there were heavy casualties during the Civil War, but they weren't always exactly active. And the way that we teach this is by actually pulling a letter from our collection from 1862 from a soldier who was stationed in the Cumberland Gap in Tennessee. And this was actually where our museum is located at. If you're not familiar with it, we are right on the edge of the Cumberland Gap. A soldier by the name of Harvey Durkee. And we've included this letter in this packet if you would like to share it with your students, but we've also provided a transcription. And I'm going to give, hopefully you have it with you. Did everyone have a chance to take a look at this lesson plan? Did you read through the letter? I'm seeing some no shakings of heads. So I'm just going to give a little bit of an overview about it. Harvey Durkee in this letter is writing to his brother, who, though we do not have his brother's letter, we know that he's quite concerned about his safety. He's heard about all the terrible fighting that's occurred and that people are unsafe, and that he's worried that his brother is not going to come home alive, basically. So in this brother, Harvey tells him, "Dear brother, as I have not sent the Hans letter out, and I thought one sheet would be lonesome, so I concluded to give it some company. But I hardly know what to write about. We'll try and fill it up with something. We have moved from our old camp about 3 miles and got up on a hill in better position, but not quite so handy to water. But I like the place very well. It's near a large cornfield, but as a matter of course, we don't have none. And then roasting a ear or two, I tell you what, old boys, such things have to suffer around these parts. Or you would think so if it was your fields. A man's honesty does him but little good here in this country. I'm glad it's not any nearer home then, for it's bad enough here without going into a civilized country. An honest man would rot in the guardhouse if he is here. That is a place that they have not got me into yet, and I don't believe they will very soon." This is also a great letter to teach about literacy rates during the Civil War and how they were not perhaps the best, because we did transcribe this completely. I am the most honest by a good deal. When I go out after apples or anything, it has to come or bleed the mercy of the seditious citizens. Does not go a great ways. In Company A, especially, there has been from 50 to 100 hogs running around our camps, and now and then one would run into danger, or as you might say, fall into the pit, just as the case. he was darn sure never to get out alive. So we're telling that they're hungry, they're a little bit bored, it's something for them to do. But he goes on with his letter talking about what he's not been able to see, what he's not been able to find. But he also assures his brother at one part not to be concerned with him because all he has time to do is sit around and eat apples and fart and so on and so forth. And that is the line that students absolutely love the most from Harvey Durkee's letter because he certainly lays it out. So, what is a soldier to do if all he has to do is sit around and fart and sit around and read apples? Well, one thing he might do is create himself a tomatrope. And so we have conversations with students about what they do with their board. And thanks to those fidget spinners, we've had lots of conversations about how those can be entertaining. But this is a tomatrope. It's easy to make. It's something that the students, if they're at home, they probably have materials like this that they can make. And a tomatrope is an optical illusion. It relies on persistence of vision. So you're not only getting a social studies lesson in with this, you're also getting about a science lesson in as well. So persistence of vision means that our eyes actually retain an image for 1/20th of a second after it's already passed from our vision. So if you cut out a little circle of paper and you tie two pieces of string to the ends, it gives you the ability to spin it quickly. Now on one edge, I've drawn a nice little bird cage here. Simple, easy to do. And on the back, I have drawn a little bird. When I spin it very quickly in front of my eyes, it appears as if my bird is appearing in the cage. And that's because of that persistence of vision that you have. Now, as a note, your bird is drawn upside down from your cage. And the kids love to do this. This is something that they have around at their home, or it's easy materials that you can make on your own too. It's a good opportunity to talk to students about if one is this bored, why is this a good hands-on activity? Why would you be interested in it? Why might a soldier build something like this? But it also gives the students a lot of fun too. Another simple activity that they can make and that we packaged for them as a boredom exercise is called a whirligig. And basically you take a small button, again, two pieces of string, and you spin it around and around and around. And it basically functions like a yo-yo that goes back and forth. This was something else that we know soldiers would make and would play with. Soldiers did all sorts of things to keep themselves from boredom because they were stuck in one place and they just couldn't go anywhere. And I think that's something that our students can definitely identify with right now. It's a good way to get them hands-on thinking about why a person might make a toy like this. And it's helping them learn a little bit of history and what the experience of war could sometimes be like for our soldiers. Now, we did lots of other hands-on activities in our STEAM camps. We made parachutes to mimic the hot air balloons that were used during the Civil War. We had videos that showed animal bones with lots of images that we brought out as well. And we also gave students the opportunity to build their own me museums. So this is another hands-on thing that students can do, even if they are not in the classroom or not at home. One of the things we always want to help students think about when they're at our museum is what a museum is and what it does. And another thing we want to help them understand is primary sources. This is a particularly good book that I love to use. It's an Usborne Flat book called See Inside a Museum. And it takes students through museums with flaps that they can look at. They can pull back things and learn about how different museums showcase different things, but how those objects in museums tell stories. And when you create a me museum, what you're doing is finding objects in your home that tell stories about you. Now, one way that we help students think about that, and I'm going to pull up another screen. And this is located in the Padlet that was sent to you. I'm going to pull this up too. Apologize. It's not giving me the opportunity right now to share my screen. There we go. Share screen.
You should have, it's set on my side for you to have that. There you go.
There we go. It came through. This is a worksheet that we have on our Padlet page that talk about how primary sources tell a story. And usually we use this when we're in the museum showing children historical. But this is something that you can use to help kids think about objects in their home that tell something about them. And it can put them on a scavenger hunt through their house as well. If they were to pick 5 things that told a story about them, what would those 5 items be? And have them think, why do those items tell a story about them? Now, we've had kids that we've had make poster boards of those items. They've taken pictures, or if they're at home, they've organized them into an exhibit of their own. And they write the title of the item, when it was purchased, and why that item was important to their life. It helps the kids look for things, it gets them moving, it starts making them think critically about primary sources. Because if items in their lives tell a story about them, that must mean too that the items they see in museums tell a story about those people's lives as well. So those are some of the hands-on activities that we've taken, ideas from our museum, and we've been translating it into activities for kids to be able to do at home as well. And I was looking at the chat because I wanted to be able to see some of the questions that we have. Let's see. Let me go up to the top so that I have everything. And thank you for sending the Padlets out. Yeah, he did sign a letter to his brother as Harvey Durkee. And yes, that's a great letter that you could do punctuation activities and spelling activities. That is what my 9-year-old is currently doing in his language classes. And that would be a perfect letter to pull out. Soldiers do not always have the best punctuation and grammar, so that can be a fun item to send out to the kids as well. For the bird cage, yes, you want to make certain that one of the images is upside down. So if you see mine here, if you turn it around, you see my little bird is upside down. So draw it one way, and it doesn't have to be a circle. It can also be a square. I think cardstock works best, but I realize if you've not had the ability to quickly send items home with your kids, they may have to work with the paper that they have. It will work with anything though. And generally you can find string's easy to come across in my house, I know, at all times. But that is an easy thing that they can do and make in their home. You can almost see the bird on the video.
Great, thank you, Natalie. So at this point, we want to kind of open things up for questions. If you guys have questions for Natalie specifically, or if you just have kind of questions or ideas for things that you've been doing with your students that you think have worked well, we'd love to have you share those.
Well, I just want to say that I do love the idea of having students think about something in their houses as primary sources, because those are things they take for granted. And they think about primary sources as just being something in the classroom or in the museum. And so I think it really helps because, like I said, I do that at at MTSU, and they still have it. That's a new way for them to think about it, that they're producing and surrounded by primary sources every single day. And also it's kind of cute to see a bunch of like upperclassmen at MTSU get excited about the idea of running out of the screen for a second and going and grabbing something and bringing it back and showing and telling it. I did that a little bit this past semester, and I'm going to do more of it next semester because yeah, usually when I teach this class, I bring the material culture in, but I'm not going to be able to do that because nobody wants to touch anything that anyone else has touched. So I like that idea of just using everyday objects. And I love that idea of the me museum. That's just
Yeah, they can
wonderful.
touch their own objects. That's
Oh,
not
yeah.
something they have to avoid. That's something they can have that's tangible. And if you think about it too, like with elementary students, I know there have been days where like the kids have been told you can bring your stuffed animal. It makes kids so proud. It's like show and tell, but really emphasizing that primary source aspect, that it tells something about you. So in addition to working at the museum, I also work with college students. And when I do, there's a picture of me at a march. And I've told my husband repeatedly, when I die, I want this photo like near my casket, which means that's something that's really important to me. It tells something tangible about me and what's important to me. And so sometimes that's what I ask my students. I'm like, what picture, what stories would you want near you? If you wanted someone to understand you, what's something that you have? And to bring it to another point too, when we were still doing in-person museum tours, we actually do a replica, like hands-on thing that we do with the kids, and they could explore those items and talk about what they thought they were and how they were used and who used them. And there was a little girl in one of my tours that I knew her mother. And from her Facebook post, I knew that she was like wild about those huge bows that they wear in their hair. And so I looked at her and I said, okay, what if one day, 100 years from now, Katie, they don't know what that bow in your hair was for? And like she looked like someone had murdered her kitten, that anyone would not know that that was what it was for. And so we've had discussions too about, I've posed to the kids, I said, when you think about if your mom or dad have had a little brother or sister, or maybe you've had cousins, were there certain colors that people bought for that baby? They'll say, yeah, blue is for boys and pink is for girls. Well, in our collection, I have advertisements I can bring out for little pink outfits for boys and little blue outfits for girls. And I said, those were the colors that people used, 120 years ago. And it blows their minds because it shows them different ways that people thought about things in the past, and talking about those tangible items as well. So, me museums thinking about and explaining the objects that they have on their own can be really, really important. Or another one, just to take for example, my me museum for when I was 9 would have had a Tamagotchi in it. My children have no idea what that is.
Yeah, I've got one of those. Well, another thing, just for a second, that I like about the Me Museum is it can also help them think about media savviness, because older kids who have like Facebook profiles and other kinds of profiles, that's what they're doing. They're actually curating what they want to present about themselves to a certain audience, and so hopefully this will get younger kids thinking about that too. It's like, well, you're making decisions about what you want people to think about you, and hopefully they'll get a sense of digital literacy and media literacy along with the just primary source analysis.
Yeah, it's really a shame we can't pull up all those old MySpace pages.
Oh God,
Let's
no,
talk
it's not a
about
shame. It's a good thing.
that.
RIP.